Copeland ministry operations is tens of thousands of tax-free dollars that roll in on a mail truck every day. Most of that money is sent in along with personal prayer requests that are processed by workers inside the ministry.
When a former Kenneth Copeland employee appeared on live television, few expected the interview to spark such widespread attention. What began as a routine conversation quickly turned into a series of startling claims about what allegedly happened behind the scenes of one of America's most influential televangelist ministries. As the revelations spread, they reignited old controversies, raised new questions, and fueled intense public debate. But what exactly was said? How credible are these allegations? And why has the interview left so many people talking? This is the story. Breaking the silence on live TV. In a television interview that quickly gained nationwide attention, a former Kenneth Copeland Ministries employee shared first-hand claims that immediately sparked widespread discussion. After working inside one of America's most recognized televangelist organizations, the whistleblower alleged that life behind the scenes looked very different from the polished image seen by millions of viewers. Rather than offering outside criticism, the former employee spoke from personal experience, prompting many people to take a closer look at the ministry. Their revelations raised fresh questions about transparency and what may have been happening beyond the public spotlight. For decades, Kenneth Copeland built a reputation as one of the most recognizable voices in prosperity preaching. Through television broadcasts watched around the world, he spoke confidently about faith, miracles, financial blessing, and the power of trusting God. To countless followers, he was more than a televangelist. He was a respected Christian leader whose teachings inspired hope and encouraged people to believe that God could transform every area of their lives. His ministry grew into a global organization supported by loyal partners who believed they were helping spread the gospel. According to the former employee, however, working inside the ministry painted a very different picture. They explained that they had accepted the job with genuine excitement, believing they were joining an organization devoted to serving God with honesty, compassion, and integrity. But they claimed that excitement did not last very long. Within a few months, they allegedly began witnessing practices that made them deeply uncomfortable and gradually led them to question the ministry they had once admired. The more they observed behind the scenes, the more they struggled to reconcile what they were seeing with the public image presented on television. Eventually, the former employee decided they could no longer remain silent. By sharing their experience on live television, they brought fresh attention to Kenneth Copeland Ministries and reignited long-running debates surrounding the organization. Their testimony encouraged many viewers to ask difficult questions about leadership, transparency, and whether the ministry's carefully crafted public image truly reflected what was happening behind closed doors. For many watching, it marked the beginning of a story far more unsettling than they had ever expected. The whistleblower who exposed Kenneth Copeland revealed that they joined his ministry to serve God, but later discovered actions behind the scenes that did not match the image of the respected preacher. But what exactly was exposed on live TV? Was it just emotion? Or did the whistleblower reveal something that would disturb any conscious mind? Let's uncover the astonishing details. The prayer requests. Kenneth Copeland rarely saw one of the most startling claims made by the former employee involved the thousands of prayer requests sent to Kenneth Copeland Ministries each week. According to the whistleblower, countless supporters mailed deeply personal letters, trusting that Kenneth Copeland would personally see their requests and pray for them. Many of these letters came from people facing illness, financial struggles, broken families, and other painful challenges. Along with their heartfelt messages, many also included financial donations, believing they were supporting God's work while seeking comfort, hope, and prayer during some of the most difficult seasons of their lives. The former employee explained that they worked in the ministry's mail processing department, where handling these letters became part of their daily responsibility. They claimed that while ministry staff members prayed over large groups of unopened mail, They never personally saw Kenneth or Gloria Copeland reading the individual prayer requests that supporters had carefully written. According to the whistleblower, the people processing the mail were often the only individuals who actually read the personal stories inside those envelopes. Perhaps even more surprising was the former employee's claim about how response letters were handled. They alleged that the ministry used sophisticated computer systems capable of producing letters that appeared to be personally prepared for each supporter. To many people receiving those responses, it could easily seem as though Kenneth Copeland himself had personally seen their letter, prayed over their request, and sent a heartfelt reply. The former employee said this created an impression that many supporters genuinely believed, even though their own experience inside the ministry led them to question whether that was actually happening. For the former employee, this became one of the first moments that deeply troubled their conscience. They understood that a ministry receiving thousands of letters each week could never realistically answer every request personally. Even so, they believed supporters deserved complete honesty about how the process actually worked. That realization, they explained, planted the first seeds of doubt and marked the beginning of a much larger journey that eventually led them to question the ministry they had once admired. It was revealed that Kenneth himself rarely saw most prayer requests sent to the ministry, while many supporters believed he personally read and responded to their needs. But why did the former employee wait until leaving the ministry before speaking out? What could have prevented an insider from revealing such serious concerns earlier? Let's find out. A ministry built on distance, secrecy, and fear. As the interview continued, the former employee revealed that their concerns extended far beyond the ministry's handling of prayer requests. According to the whistleblower, the workplace was very different from the welcoming Christian environment they had expected. Instead, they claimed an unspoken culture of silence discouraged employees from asking difficult questions or raising concerns. Despite the ministry employing hundreds of staff members, the former employee alleged that very few ever had direct contact with Kenneth or Gloria Copeland. They also claimed there was an unwritten expectation that employees should not approach, speak to, or casually interact with the couple around the ministry headquarters. The former employee explained that this sense of distance created an environment where many workers simply kept their heads down and focused on their responsibilities. According to their account, challenging decisions or raising uncomfortable questions was something employees generally avoided because they believed doing so could create unwanted problems. Whether those fears were justified or not, the whistleblower claimed many workers felt it was safer to remain quiet than to risk drawing attention to themselves. These allegations attracted even greater public interest when similar claims appeared during a United States Senate inquiry into several high-profile televangelist ministries. Reports connected to that investigation noted that some former workers claimed they were reluctant to speak publicly because they had signed confidentiality agreements and feared possible legal action. Others reportedly said they had been warned that criticizing the ministry or speaking against its leadership could bring serious spiritual, financial, or personal consequences. According to those accounts, some employees even believed they could lose God's protection if they publicly challenged Kenneth Copeland or the ministry. Looking back, the former employee said this atmosphere had a lasting impact on many people working there. They described a workplace where silence often felt safer than honesty, where difficult conversations rarely happened, and where employees frequently chose to suppress their concerns rather than risk possible consequences. For the whistleblower, that environment became another reason they eventually decided they could no longer remain part of the organization. Aside from the whistleblower's claim that Kenneth built a ministry where silence felt safer than honesty, did he ever defend himself against the accusations? What reasons did he give for his actions? And did his defense change how people viewed him despite the growing controversy? Let's uncover the details. The interview that put Kenneth on the spot. As the former employee's allegations continued gaining attention, many people began revisiting one of Kenneth Copeland's most widely discussed television appearances. The interview, conducted by Inside Edition correspondent Lisa Guerrero, quickly became a viral moment that drew millions of views and reignited public debate about the televangelist's lifestyle and leadership. For many viewers, especially those who had already heard the former employee's account, the interview seemed to add another layer to the growing controversy surrounding Kenneth Copeland Ministries. During the conversation, Guerrero questioned Kenneth Copeland about one of the ministry's most talked-about topics: its fleet of private jets. Over the years, the televangelist had defended owning multiple aircraft, saying they were necessary for carrying out his ministry around the world. Guerrero also brought up an earlier statement in which Copeland had described flying on commercial airlines as being like traveling in a long tube with a bunch of demons. That comment had already sparked widespread criticism and had become one of the most frequently discussed moments of his ministry. When Guerrero asked whether he believed people flying on commercial airplanes were demons, Kenneth Copeland quickly pushed back. He firmly denied making that claim and became noticeably defensive during the exchange, insisting that his words had been misunderstood. He later explained that he was referring to spiritual influences and distractions rather than the passengers themselves. Throughout the interview, he defended his position, arguing that private air travel allowed him to focus on ministry work without unnecessary interruptions before preaching. The tense conversation quickly spread across television broadcasts, news websites, and social media platforms, where millions of people watched and debated every moment. Some viewers believed Kenneth Copeland had successfully explained his position, while others felt his responses only raised even more questions. The interview became one of the defining public moments of his ministry and introduced many people to the broader controversies surrounding his leadership. For those who had already listened to the former employee's testimony, the timing of the interview made it even more significant. Instead of calming public concern, it encouraged many viewers to take a closer look at the ministry and ask whether the image presented to supporters truly reflected what was happening behind the scenes. Kenneth defended his use of private jets during a widely discussed interview. But were the private jets the only reason his former employee lost trust in him? Or was there a series of events that gradually changed the whistleblower's view? And what finally convinced the former employee that it was time to speak out? Let's delve into the intriguing details. The former employee questions the ministry's priorities. As time passed, the former employee said another concern slowly became impossible to ignore. It was not simply about how the ministry operated behind the scenes, still about the growing contrast between the message supporters heard on television and the lifestyle the ministry appeared to enjoy. While working at Kenneth Copeland Ministries, the former employee watched thousands of faithful supporters continue to send donations, believing their financial gifts were helping to spread the gospel and reach people with a message of hope. Many donors gave sacrificially because they trusted the ministry and believed they were supporting God's work. At the same time, Kenneth Copeland continued defending the ministry's ownership of multiple private aircraft, including a Gulfstream 5 jet. He explained on several occasions that flying commercially would make it difficult for him to carry out his ministry schedule, arguing that private travel allowed him to reach more people and remain focused before preaching. He also regularly encouraged supporters to give generously, often teaching that faithful giving would bring God's blessings into their lives. After receiving major financial support for the ministry's newest aircraft, he publicly thanked donors and prayed that God would bless them abundantly for their generosity. As these statements received increasing media attention, so did reports highlighting the ministry's expensive planes, luxury homes, private airport, and other valuable properties. Those reports sparked widespread public debate about whether such a lifestyle reflected the same biblical values of humility, sacrifice, and service that many supporters believed they were helping promote through their donations. According to the former employee, witnessing this growing gap became deeply unsettling. They explained that they did not question every donation or every ministry expense. Rather, they found themselves wrestling with whether the ministry's priorities had gradually shifted away from the people it was meant to serve. The more they reflected on what they were seeing, the more difficult it became to reconcile the ministry's message of faith with the growing focus on wealth and material success. For the former employee, these concerns did not appear overnight. They developed slowly over time, eventually becoming impossible to dismiss. What began as small questions gradually grew into serious doubts that challenged the confidence they once had in Kenneth Copeland Ministries and its leadership. The former employee believed that the ministry's priorities had drifted away from the core values that first attracted them. But at what point did they decide to leave? Were they relieved to walk away, or was it a painful decision made to protect their integrity? Let's find out. Why the former employee could no longer stay. Perhaps the most emotional moment of the interview came when the former Kenneth Copeland Ministries employee explained why they ultimately chose to leave an organization they had once been proud to serve. Looking back, they said they had accepted the job with genuine excitement and a sincere desire to serve God. Like many supporters, they admired Kenneth Copeland and believed they were joining a ministry committed to spreading the gospel with honesty, integrity, and compassion. They saw the opportunity as more than just employment. It was something they believed could strengthen both their faith and their purpose. However, according to the former employee, that sense of excitement slowly began to fade. As the weeks turned into months, they claimed they started witnessing things that conflicted with the values they believed a Christian ministry should represent. The more they observed, the harder it became to ignore the growing questions in their mind. They found themselves wrestling with fundraising methods, prosperity teachings, miracle claims, and what they believed was an increasing gap between the ministry's carefully presented public image and the reality they experienced while working behind the scenes. The whistleblower said their concerns developed gradually, with each experience creating more uncertainty. At first, they dismissed those feelings, hoping there was a reasonable explanation. Over time, however, their conscience became impossible to ignore. The former employee said remaining at the ministry grew emotionally draining as they struggled to reconcile their deeply held faith with questions they could no longer set aside. In the end, they decided walking away was the only choice they could live with. Leaving Kenneth Copeland Ministries, they said, was about much more than resigning from a position. It marked the beginning of a deeply personal journey to rebuild their trust in Christian leadership and rediscover the faith that had first inspired them to join the ministry. They had to separate their relationship with God from their experience inside the organization while slowly processing everything they believed they had witnessed behind closed doors. It was a painful decision, but one they felt they could no longer avoid. The former employee of Kenneth Copeland made it clear that they left the ministry deeply disappointed by what they claimed to have discovered behind the scenes. But how seriously will these revelations be taken? Could this interview change how people view or respect Kenneth Copeland? Let's uncover the details. The implications of former employees' allegations. What began as one former employee sharing their personal experience soon grew into a much larger conversation that reached far beyond Kenneth Copeland Ministries. Once the interview aired on live television, it quickly attracted widespread attention from journalists, religious commentators, former supporters, curious viewers who wanted to know whether the allegations reflected isolated experiences or pointed to deeper issues within the organization. For many people, the interview reopened long-standing debates about the ministry's finances, leadership style, prosperity teachings, and overall transparency. Suddenly, questions that had circulated for years were once again being discussed across news outlets, television programs, and online platforms. As public interest continued to grow, attention also returned to a United States Senate inquiry that examined the financial practices of several well-known televangelist ministries. Kenneth Copeland Ministries was among the organizations reviewed during that investigation. While the inquiry did not conclude that Kenneth or Gloria Copeland personally profited from ministry donations, investigators reported facing significant challenges while trying to obtain requested information. The inquiry also included accounts from some former workers who claimed they felt uncomfortable speaking publicly because they had signed confidentiality agreements or feared possible consequences after leaving the ministry. Those claims added another layer to the growing public discussion, even though the ministry denied wrongdoing. Around the same period, Kenneth Copeland Ministries also introduced a strict code of honor that applied to employees both inside and outside the workplace. The policy required staff members to follow detailed standards of personal conduct, with violations potentially resulting in disciplinary action or dismissal. Supporters viewed the code as an effort to maintain high moral standards within a Christian organization. Critics, however, argued that some of its requirements appeared unusually strict and raised questions about how much control a ministry should have over employees' private lives. Even today, opinions remain deeply divided. Supporters continue to defend Kenneth Copeland and point to the ministry's global outreach, charitable work, and decades of preaching. Critics, however, believe the former employee's testimony raised important questions that deserve honest answers. Whether people accepted or rejected the allegations, the interview changed the public conversation in a significant way. It encouraged many viewers to look beyond polished broadcasts and powerful sermons, asking difficult questions about accountability, transparency, and what may have been happening behind the scenes of one of America's most recognized televangelist ministries. So, what do you think about the revelations surrounding Kenneth Copeland? Will they affect how people view or respect the televangelist? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.